Swamiji gave 5 great lectures in Madras. They are masterpieces, both language, diction, ideas. The first lecture, title itself is remarkable. With all this enthusiasm of the people, how to channelize this enthusiasm to national development, national welfare, nation making. And so, the first title is My Plan of Campaign. Like a Napoleon planning a campaign. That is the first lecture, My Plan of Campaign. Then comes Vedanta and its application to Indian life. Third comes the work before us. What are the great problems that we have to face in the nation? Then comes the sages of India, another masterly lecture, coming from the Upanishads up to Ramakrishna, a beautiful presentation of the great sages and incarnations who have adorned the horizon of India. And lastly comes that wonderful lecture, The Future of India. In these lectures, Swamiji pointed out how narrow our minds had become, how contracted our life has become. Almost to die. Too much contraction means death, expansion means life. We were in a contracted mind, as it were. And then this caste exclusiveness, this untouchability, and neglect of women, treated as good for nothing people. Our women have suffered for these 2000 years from all the books written to govern social life. In all of them, you will find only the rights of men and the duties of women. There are no rights, only duties. Rights all belong to men only. Up to date, almost all the books contain only this kind of thing, and they have no education. Even a Brahmana's wife cannot utter the word "oh." They were deprived of all facilities. This kind of evil descended upon the nation. Humanity's humanness was completely eradicated. Swamiji pointed out to all this narrow mind must go. Broad issues are there. The whole world is there. You have to work together with the rest of the world. You have to change all this. There he spoke of the need to work hard. Work hard. There is too much of talk in India. Talk, talk, talk. Talk less, work more, and feel more. Feel from the heart, then power will come. All these wonderful ideas you get in all these lectures. In one place, we have caste aristocracy, money aristocracy, and pedigree aristocracy. All these in India. And they have been, working heavily to put people down these centuries together. A most revolutionary sentence occurs in that lecture, Future of India. The duty of every aristocracy is to dig its own grave. The sooner it does so, the better. The more it will delay, the more it will fester, and the worse death it will die. What a language! 1897. Marxism and other things nobody had heard in India at that time. But here is a person who is speaking about awakening of humanity. Those common people, millions of them, living like animals, we have to raise them. The whole thing has to be changed. He uses the word revolution. A revolutionary change is needed in India, in our society. Our teachings are great. Our Upanishads and Gita speak highly of the divinity of the human being. but we treat the human being worse than animals. This contradiction must go. In one letter he had written from America to India, no religion on earth preaches the dignity of humanity in such a lofty strain as Hinduism, and no religion on earth treads upon the necks of the poor and the low in such a fashion as Hinduism. Both we are doing. Man is the Atman, the immortal self, that is the true nature of man. But we just treat him worse than cattle, worse than animal. Now all these things you will find in this wonderful literature. And as for religion, simply it became just a few rituals and ceremonies without any heart in it, without any spiritual benefit out of it, without developing character out of it. That kind of religion also lost all relevance in the modern period. And the priests were trying to put more and more bonds on the hands of the people, against which Swami wrote from Japan on the way to America. Kick out the priests who are against progress. They will never mend. What we want is an infinite heart, compassion for all. That humanity, humanism must come to us in a big way. And then comes a famous passage in that lecture on future of India. It is full of energy. This particular subject says here, for the next, so give up being a slave. Don't be slavish, he says. Give up being a slave. For the next 50 years, this alone shall be our keynote, this our great Mother India. Let all other vain gods disappear for the time from our minds. This is the only God that is awake. Our own race. Everywhere is hands, everywhere is feet, everywhere is ears. He covers everything. That is the famous Sarvatah Panipadam Tat Sarvatoksha Shiromukam. In the Gita you find God as a Virat Sarupa, manifested to the universe. That is the Vedantic teaching. That here you can see God present, living God. We neglect them. We have destroyed God in this form. So he says, this is the Virat that we have to worship. All other gods are sleeping. What vain gods shall we go after and yet cannot worship? The God that we see all around us, the Virat Sarupa. We cannot worship this Virat. We go to a temple, weep before the God there, come here and cheat a human being here. We never had happy relations between human beings. Our God is only in the temple and nowhere else. Swami is referring to that. Here is the Virat Swarupa. We neglected God there. This is based on the beautiful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. That reference is coming here. It says, when we have worshipped this, we shall be able to worship all our gods. Before we can crawl half a mile, we want to cross the ocean like Hanuman. It cannot be. Everyone going to be a yogi, everyone going to meditate, it cannot be. The whole day mixing with the world, with karmakanda, ritualistic section, and the evening sitting down and blowing through your nose, doing some pranayama. This is all of religion. The entire human aspect is forgotten, is neglected. It says, blowing through your nose, as the language is used here. Is it so easy? Should rishis come flying through the air because you have blown 3 times through the nose? Is it a joke? It is all nonsense with the language. Man with authority who speaks, it is all nonsense. What we need is chitta shuddhi, purity of the mind, purity of heart. There. And how does it come? The first of all worship is the worship of the Virat. The next man in front of you, the neighbor, the others, they are the people who have to honor and worship, cooperate and work together. That is the first thing. All those who are around us, worship it. Not merely serve, but worship it with language. Then comes worship is the exact equivalent of the Sanskrit word, and no other English word will do. This comes from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Tritiya Skandham, where Kapila gives spiritual advice to his mother, Devahuti. Kapila was an incarnation of the divine. In that advice comes, Mother, I am not pleased with people spending enormous money to worship me in some images while insulting me in all the human beings around. I am in all of them. I don't like that kind of worship. But worship me in all beings. Worship is the word. What is that word? Arhayet, Archayet, Archana, Arhana is called worship. When service is done with reverence, it becomes worship. What a beautiful idea. But how to worship God in man? You can't go to the street and say, stop, I want to worship you, do an arati. You can't do that. But the Lord says, Dhanamanabhyam, through removal of felt needs and respecting Him while serving Him. Don't look down upon Him. Dhanamanabhyam. And Maitriya, through friendship. Abhinnena chakshusha, attitude of non-separateness, we are all one, we are all one. With this attitude, worship me in all beings. The word Swamiji said, therefore, is worship, arhayet, archayet, not merely sevayet, seva, only ordinary service. So, worship is the exact equivalent of the Sanskrit word, and no other English word will do. These are all our gods, men and women, our own countrymen, and animals also, all of them. He says, these are to be worshipped, all these around us. Then, these we have to worship instead of being jealous of each other and fighting each other. We are being constantly jealous of each other. Jealousy is the characteristic of a slave. Slaves alone are jealous. Why that man gets better than me? That only slavish minds develop jealousy. So Swamiji has written, jealousy and slavery are the obverse and reverse of the same coin. So give up being a slave. He started this passage. And so here he says, these are the countrymen whom we have to worship, the first gods whom we have to worship instead of being jealous of each other and fighting each other. We are the most litigious people in the whole world. I have traveled around the world. I have never seen so much of litigation as we see in this country. For everything litigation. Because we have no faith in man. Our faith is in that idol in the temple, nowhere else. The whole thing has to change. Swamiji's reference is coming to that particular subject. It is the most terrible karma for which we are suffering, and yet it does not open our eyes. It is time to open our eyes. Now this passage is very famous. This idea of seeing God in every human being, respect and worship and service. The stress is on service with reverence. So that becomes worship, not throwing a paisa like a feudal type of society charity. Go to a temple, after worshipping, you see a poor man there, throw a paisa towards him and you go away. You didn't care for him at all, no respect for him. That is not what we need. We must respect even the poorest of the poor. The divine is there. Today we are in democracy. Everybody has a value, unit value. So Swamiji spoke at that time. This wonderful democracy that is to come later, where we can have that relationship between one human being and the other in a spirit of equality, mutual respect and cooperation. Service is the key word. In one passage he has said, renunciation and service are the twin ideals of India. Intensify her in those channels, the rest will take care of itself. Tyaga, Seva. Without a little Tyaga, you can't do any Seva. If you want to show a man which is that house, you have to go out to the way to show that house. That is sacrifice you have to do. Without a little Tyaga, real Seva cannot be done. So this Tyaga of this little I, so that the larger I may manifest, I am one with you. That spiritual development must come to people concerned. Now these are the various lectures in Madras